So I assume it's recording. Yes, that looks like a record icon. So welcome everyone to the September 14, 2022 Microsoft 365 Modern Management Meetup. My name is Mike O'Shea, and you can find me on Twitter at InTunedIn. And we're in a special location today. We actually made an effort to not sit at home and join. We're in a meeting room designed for 19 people, and or technically there should be 3 of us in here, but there's only 2 of us right now. So yeah, a bit of an awkward setup in here for us. But otherwise, I guess Ben and Jerome, if you just want to do some quick introductions as well.
For sure, I'll jump in. Hey, my name's Ben. You can find me on Twitter at powers-hell. I do all sorts of fun PowerShell-y stuff, primarily focused around automating Intune and endpoint management. And yeah, that's me.
Yeah. I'm new to the club. My name's Jeroen. You can follow me at Twitter as well. I won't say it in English because it's not sayable, let's say that. I'm from the Netherlands, and yeah, I'm doing mostly stuff in endpoint management and Microsoft 365, and I'm an MCT as well. So that's me.
Nice.
And in the room with us today, we've also got Kwok. So don't worry, Kwok, I won't put you on the spot and force you to introduce yourself. Okay, so I think we've got a fairly small group today, and I guess the topics that we've got really shouldn't take like a huge amount of time to get through, unless people really want to go down rabbit holes on the ADMX side to keep Ben very, very excited. No. You can spell it, and that's the limit.
That's all I really care about.
Yeah. Okay, so so I guess just sort of the first thing we'll do is like anyone who's new, if you just want to do a quick introduction, either via just text chat, or if you want to unmute to just do an introduction, and basically next slide we'll sort of switch into that. Now we'll also talk a little bit about Ignite. So Ignite is happening, it's in person. It's in person in a very limited fashion. It's something like 1,500 to 2,000 people or something. So it's not Ignite as we know it. So I guess the follow on from there, and have they published the agenda? Like content? Okay, so I haven't looked at the content yet, but I'm guessing that because it's a smaller event, or even the last few, I think they've kind of really, they haven't had too many overlapping sessions, etc., that you would have seen at like something like Orlando, where you'd have what 40 or 50 different sessions running at the same time, and some of them would be 2 or 3 kilometers away from each other. So I think it's like, so I guess for most of it's really not going to be drastically different to what Ignite has been in terms of the online events for the last few years. But we'll talk a little bit more about that. Then the other topics that we've got, just a quick update on a few of the changes that have occurred with Windows 365 and Azure Virtual Desktop. So some of the things that, if you kind of paid attention to them when they were launched, but they weren't really things that were right for you, we'll talk about some of the things that have changed. And then the main topic that we've then got is the new preview feature that should be in everyone's tenants now, importing your custom ADMX and ADML templates, as long as English is the language that you want to use. But yeah. And then, as per usual, we'll have a general discussion at the end. So I guess first thing is, just in case I'm looking at the comments, I just saw Ben's comment, Ignite Lite. Yes,
Small
but
file.
we've got a few other Ignite things to talk about though. So I guess if there's anyone who wants to do an introduction, I'm sort of staring at a screen that's a little bit away from me and not seeing any, at least from the short list of names I can see, not seeing anyone new that we haven't seen at events before. But if anyone does want to just do a quick intro via chat, or just to unmute, we'll give you a second.
If I may?
Go for it.
Yes, thanks. I'm Ahmed. I'm also from the Netherlands. It's my first time joining you guys. I hope to learn a lot from you. So I'm a cloud engineer. I have worked the last couple of years at Inspark. I don't know if you know it. Inspark, Society, and other local governments to help them with their cloud transition. And one of the things we use is also AVD, but it doesn't really work like we want it to. So I hope to get some great information from you guys to implement it for one of my customers.
Excellent. So anyone else who's new? Can I actually scroll on this thing?
Yeah, hey,
It's amazing.
my name's Kristen Johnson. I've just started a new role working with modern management, coming back to a technical role after a few years of being a people leader. So looking forward to diving back into it.
Excellent.
Kristen, welcome.
Okay, well, I think that's everyone. So let's jump on in. And just a couple of other things about Ignite. So the timing of Ignite is good and bad for us. So next month's meeting will be October 12, our time, but Ignite kicks off the 12th US time. So by the time we loop back around to what was covered at Ignite, it will basically be 4 weeks later. Now, we've sort of been given an opportunity to do like a post-Ignite after party, and I'm trying to figure out what's involved in it, and if it doesn't involve us sort of being provided giveaways and pizza, like I'm not sure. So Ben, I'm sure you've probably seen some of the emails around that, maybe.
What's an email? Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
I have. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is something that I've got to try to figure out. Is it something that kind of makes sense for us, especially if it's not something that we're doing until 4 weeks later? So even though I guess next month we are basically going to be doing a recap of all of the announcements. Oh, sorry, the month afterwards we're going to be doing a recap of the Ignite announcements. So it could still work out, but it just feels weird doing promoting something as an after party 4 weeks after something has happened. Like the after party is what you go to immediately after the event and somehow find your way back to where you're staying, regardless of the
We'll just do it. Let's just call it an Ignite wrap up.
Yeah,
And be done with it, right?
Yeah. So just make sure you register for that. And I've been informed that the session schedule, or is it the session scheduler that's open, or is it just the sessions are being
Registration's opened already.
Okay, so registration is opened. Yeah.
I think session tracks have been shared, but I don't think the sessions themselves.
Okay, so for the first part, just wanted to have a quick conversation around some of the things that have been introduced in Win365 since it was launched, as well as some of the more recent updates to Azure Virtual Desktop. Now, with these, there's a bunch of stuff that we're not going to go into any real detail on. I've just sort of picked out a handful of things for both of them just to cover off, I guess, in terms of the way, the things that are probably more related to what we need to think about when it comes to these things. And also just to sort of set the stage for something that I think we probably need to revisit in a future session is like something that I don't think people realize is how important your identity solution is in terms of determining what your Azure Virtual Desktop functionality is going to be. So if someone says, I just want everything to be Azure AD joint, and I don't want any AD synchronization from on-prem, it's AAD only. Obviously there are some good flow-on effects from that in general, but there are some other things that probably worth us revisiting as a topic in a future session. So on the Win365 side, if we start taking a look here, probably the big ones that sort of stood out most recently were now there's like an official Windows 11 optimized image. And then the other thing here is you'll notice that I've got in here that it requires a Gen 2 VM. So you don't have to, so with your Win 10 VMs, they don't have to be Gen 2, but it's, we're at the point now with Win 11 where they're sort of saying, okay, even though like the Gen 2 VM means that you'll get UEFI instead of BIOS for the VM, etc. I guess the thing that I'm thinking that potentially is going to cause a bit of confusion here, once we start talking about UEFI and we start talking about secure boot, what's the thing that you potentially think people might jump to a conclusion as to what that also means? So if we're talking about Gen 2 virtual machines, we're talking about secure boot, is there anything that comes to mind for anyone that might be an incorrect assumption that somebody makes?
That you can't do BitLocker or TPM.
Yeah. So people going, oh, so does this mean that we can do that? And it's like that is not what this is. So just sort of be careful with that. It's like, so you've got to be quite specific, because especially on the Windows 11 side, when it's the TPM 2.0 requirement has been such a strong push by Microsoft, that this is something that we can sort of easily sort of discuss why it's different here. It's not like somebody could walk into an Azure data or Microsoft data center and carry racks of equipment out. So I guess the physical benefits there, and I guess the other thing as well here is that we're not like, where it's different to AVD is that like with AVD, because we've got the ability for people to actually start getting access to the base images, etc., then using Azure disk encryption there would make sense if somebody said, look, we really want to secure that. But in Win365, you're not getting that same underlying access to the infrastructure to grab the VHDs that are up there. Like Microsoft is handling all of that. So the BitLocker thing, I think, like it's using like there's still AES encryption under the covers, etc. But I think it's quite a different scenario where somebody who's looking at it going, well, why can't we use Azure disk encryption, etc. Someone who's having that conversation needs to look at AVD instead. If someone wants that level of close control over it, Win365 might be okay for them if they're willing to let go of certain things. But telling someone to let go of BitLocker could have some negative repercussions. They might interpret that the wrong way.
I think on that as well, the conversation around is my disk secure and that sort of thing, that that as you are very much saying, Mark, spawns from the concept of I left my laptop on the train and now someone has it. You can't leave your data center on a train. Or I mean, you can, I guess, if you have one of Steve's laptops, but functionally, a lot of the risk that we associate with on-prem devices or personal devices are gone with AVD or even M365 or whatever it's called now. So the concern that we have around security of this stuff is from on-prem, and maybe that needs to go away a little bit when we start getting rid of, we're removing the risk because we're outsourcing that risk. And the benefit of that is that we don't need to worry about that risk anymore, because if that gets taken over, there's a bigger conversation. The conversation I used to have all the time was, don't necessarily worry if someone can get access to, say, like a function app that you've written, because if they've got access to that, they've got access to everything else in your portal. That's the bigger concern. So, once you sort of start having that conversation, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, so then the other two then, so as I mentioned, things like Secure Boot, but Secure Boot's not available in all regions yet. And the other one that I've got in here, it's also, you'll see it listed over on the next slide where we're talking about Azure Virtual Desktop, but RDP Short Path. So RDP Short Path for private networks has been available over on the AVD side for a while now. But what it required was you to either have ExpressRoute or VPN connectivity into your Azure VNets. And instead of using your TCP, it would basically fall back to, it would actually convert over to UDP just to make it more efficient. But it didn't work over public connections, whereas now in preview on both sides, you've got RDP short paths set up there. or sorry, it's in public preview.
Sure.
So basically, I guess the takeaway from that one is anyone who's got RDP rules set up in firewalls, etc., to only allow TCP-based RDP. And I think even if you're going through, and like any of you who work with Azure and network security groups, etc., I still think by default, if you choose RDP, it only chooses TCP. It doesn't choose UDP as well. So I could see that this one is something that the technology will do a good job of speeding things up. But if there's anything broken, or if there's anything where UDP can't get through, it will just revert back to TCP. So people who think they might have everything configured to make it work may not actually have the networking side of things configured.
Sure.
Now, a few of the other things that I've got in there, that these ones are sort of going back to either early this year or late last year, but things like Azure AD joint support. The reason why I've thrown that one in there was that it was only like a week and a bit ago that I had someone go, oh, I didn't know that Win365 already supported Azure AD join. And I was like, oh no, this happened quite a while ago. You know, it was something that had to get in there pretty quickly. Now, the other one that's in that that I guess maybe for an audience like this that's kind of interesting is nested virtualization. But remember with this one that you do need to go up to one of the larger VM sizes that's available. You can't just sort of choose entry-level VM sizes for that one. And with the nested virtualization, it's pretty much the same as if you've used it in Azure, where you have to choose, it's basically the VM generation and size that's going to determine whether or not you get that. And then the other thing as well that was added in, and again, this is something that's not recent, was uploading custom images without having to pull them out of like somewhere where you're storing them in your Azure subscription. Now, I guess there's another element here when it comes to things like uploading or storing custom images on the, actually, no, that's more of an AVD conversation, so we can cover that one next. But here, if someone needs to upload custom images, you don't need to drop them into like storage, dropping it into blob storage or putting it in as a managed disk or whatever. You don't have to do that here. Now, the thing here though with Win365, like I think anyone who's probably trying to do a lot with it, I'd be shocked to find out that they don't have an Azure subscription already, and then they're not at least doing something with the virtual networking. Like if someone's just deploying like a few remote workstations for people like that, I could kind of understand, okay, maybe you don't need that, things like VNet support there. But then, if you sort of think about, or when I think about the scenarios here, so much of this still ends up being people needing to access maybe remote line of business apps, etc., where they're going to need to have line of sight to those workloads anyway. And those workloads are probably sitting somewhere in an Azure VNet or on-prem. So you still, so in a lot of cases, having that Azure subscription, having Azure virtual networking knowledge is still going to go a long way with these things. Now, on the Azure Virtual Desktop side here, probably the big one here is something that's in public preview, and it's the single sign-on and passwordless support with Insider Build. So you've got to use Windows 11. So no, it's at least not yet, or maybe not ever, not Windows 10 support in there. And and you've got to ask the question there. So this is not based on any knowledge of what's happening, but it's the usual situation of does it make sense for them to invest here in Windows 10 to add these kind to support these capabilities there? When what is it? So Win 10, I think another 4 years of life.
5, yeah.
So officially, like 4 years. Actually, so 3, 4 or 3. 3. 3 years of life. Yeah. So it's. Of course, then you've got to sort of think about extended support, etc. But if we think about it, well, assuming those kinds of things.
That's the question, right? Is there going to be another Windows 10 build next year?
Yeah. So with that one, I wouldn't be shocked if it was backported to Windows 10, but I also would not be surprised at all if it wasn't backported to Win 10. But just remember though that it's you do need to be sort of testing it out on Windows Insider builds. So really what you'd be doing in a production environment with this is just testing it out to see if it works. Like unless you signed up for Business Insider and you've got, you are actually actively pushing preview builds out. It's targeting a very small subset of people who need to test this functionality. Now, another update that went in was now we do actually have the metadata storage available in Australia. So it and Japan were in preview for a while, but they're both generally available now. Other things that are in preview, public preview anyway, Intune config for Win11 multi-session. So that's so again, seeing Windows 11 support increasing over here on the AVD side, but the Win 10 Intune multi-session support, that's been generally available for a while. And also, again, the RDP short path for public networks is in here because effectively it's the same underlying technology underneath. We shouldn't say that it's the same, but a lot of similar technologies powering AVD and Win365. So seeing things that get added to one magically pop up in the other shouldn't really come as too much as a surprise sometimes. Now, for anyone who has got deployments of Win365 or AVD, so these were sort of just the list of things that sort of jumped out at me as things that were interesting for me. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they're interesting for you or your customers. So have any of the recent changes in either of these been something that has kind of been a must-have that maybe you've got, that in your environments, that was something that you were basically waiting on before you'd even consider one of these? Is anyone in that situation?
So Mark, I am dealing with a 400-seat Windows 365 deployment at the moment for a bank. And one of the features that has recently been enabled is preview is the Cloud PC under review, which allows you to take a secure copy of that VM for for analysis. And it's something that's important for those high secure kind of environments.
Now, just a question on that, because in my mind, when I think about Windows 365, like I've got a mental association of it with smaller environments. So when you're sort of talking about 400, like for me, that's
a small bank.
Sorry?
So it's a small bank.
Yeah. And so are they going down that path because they just don't want to manage AVD? Is there anything that sort of pushed the conversation one way versus the other?
Yes, so it is all about performance and being able to easily scale up and down, change different SKUs by user without needing to worry about changing the underlying platform.
Okay.
So we're going completely cloud, but still hybrid identity with single sign-on to be able to access legacy Kerberos-based services and applications.
So so I think then, I'll chat to you after this because I think you might have some good input on the topic that I was sort of proposing for a future session, which is like it's almost like to get the most out of AVD in Windows 365, hybrid identity really seems to be a requirement.
Yes.
There's a lot of little or not so little things you discover afterwards where you go, oh, I can't do this or that if I don't have hybrid identity.
And that would be because Kerberos key trust still is not a thing.
Yeah. So, but the Kerberos, so one of the guys over on the identity team at Microsoft, Steve Cyphers, he's basically the Kerberos guy.
Sure.
And he's only got 2 dogs. I keep telling him he should get a 3rd dog because then he's got the perfect Halloween.
Yes,
thing,
perfect.
the 3-headed dog. or borrow a big dog, and both of his dogs are small, and just attach the two small dogs to a big dog for the win. But he's been posting a bit recently about, basically what we're starting to see now with things like Kerberos capability starting to be exposed to Azure files, etc. He's he's basically one of the people not on that feature set, but on the technologies that allow that feature set to work. And he's been posting a bunch of stuff, just sort of threads around, what he's been working on. Here's why it works this way, etc. So if anyone really does want to go down Kerberos rabbit holes with Microsoft technologies, let me know, and I'll point you through to Steve if you haven't already followed him over on Twitter. But even there, you end up having to have a conversation around, even if you don't want domain controllers, the benefits you get from having domain controllers, or let's sort of keep it as domain controllers. Let's not simplify it down to a single DC, because that will set people off, going not a good deployment. But there's like a whole different conversation that opens up around, okay, well, if we've just got DCs for the sake of hybrid identity, but no one's actually authenticating against those DCs, it's a very different type of DC in terms of performance requirements, etc. When really it's Azure AD that's handling everything else. And Azure AD domain services at first looks like it ticks a few boxes.
It ticks no boxes. It creates more boxes that aren't ticked.
Yeah. It's like, oh, no, it's not. It gives you a domain controller like experience. And whenever you hear the word experience, I think of it when like if you're sort of driving down the street, you see a poster for a band and it's the something experience. It's going to be bad. It doesn't matter. Yeah. So Ben, I'm trying to think. So you're a big Justin Bieber fan, obviously.
Huge.
So I know that you were very disappointed when you went to see the Justin Bieber experience at your local RSL club.
Yeah, all of a sudden it's just one direction, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
No.
So with that, it's so even though Azure AD Domain Services does have some really good use case scenarios, I don't think AVD is one of them. It's gotten better, but, and it hurts me to say this, but domain controllers have a place, which then ties
frustrating. We're sort of, we're kind of in that position where, AADDS was it was poised to be the solution that everyone wanted. If it was the product that everyone expected it, which was literally a domain controller as a service, with a full fat domain controller as a service. Yeah. That's what everyone wants. That's not what it is. Yeah. And that has basically been the problem since day dot.
So I think we probably should then have this as a bit of a broader conversation and tie in so if you are going to get these additional experiences, if you've got domain controllers, what are some good approaches to keep them in Azure without sort of going overboard in terms of what you're actually trying to do with them. So I'll take note of that one. And I
think we're going to get more benefit from the Azure AD Kerberos file service integration now than going down that path. It is a bit of a missell to suggest AADS to anybody. Because fundamentally, you can run domain controllers a lot cheaper than that service anyway.
Of course,
especially when
with all the extra functionality,
and especially when the DCs aren't actually doing any authentication.
Yes.
Basically, it's like I'm just provisioning users in them occasionally.
Yeah, cost-wise, it seems it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
We've had lots of conversations about that in my past, and I'm glad I don't have to think about it a great deal at the moment.
So right now, one of our biggest challenges is more around printing, but I think printing and print management in Intune in general is pretty shoddy.
Yeah.
And there isn't an awful lot of YouTube videos around it, because that's where I get all my info from. So
there's not, but there's also if we all cast our minds back just recently, there was a term that everyone probably got tattooed on their necks called print nightmare. There's a reason that that printing is difficult in a zero trust a zero trust networking scenario. It's because printing can cause problems. You're inherently allowing unsigned drivers to be installed on devices to do God knows what. You know, and the fix to Print Nightmare essentially blocked a bunch of the things that allowed us to make printing easy for zero trust environments. So much so that I have a blog post that I wrote around ways that I have had print drivers deployed in the past, and I've had people say this doesn't work anymore. I'm like, yes, that's by design, because it's insecure. The drivers need to be from a trusted environment.
Yeah.
In a zero trust environment, you have no trust, you don't get drivers. So like it's very much a chicken and the egg scenario. Where do you Steve's not even in the room, but Steve, if I'm speaking for Steve, he'll say, why do you need to print? That's essentially data loss prevention. And then everyone should just punch Steve in the head, because that's ridiculous. But there's problems that happen when you decide to do zero trust.
Yeah. So I guess just sticking on the printer side. So I haven't looked too closely at it, but there are some announcements around universal print support inside of Azure Virtual Desktop, but I haven't seen anything around that extending over to Windows 365. Everything I've seen around it has been 100% AVD focused, but maybe I was just looking in the wrong places. But again,
I would assume that if it's coming from AVD, then it should come across the other cloud PC stuff, but I'm not officially stating that.
So that means we can have the universal print conversation again.
Do we have to? Has the licensing changed?
I think
we just leave
I think they did make some changes, but it was not something that I wanted to go back and look at in case they made it even worse.
Yeah.
We had customers who told us they'd pay even more for these capabilities. So we have given them that capability.
Yeah, exactly. That's my concern. But also in my defense, I haven't printed anything in about 7 years. So, I don't particularly care about cloud printing or universal print.
I print off the emails that get sent to me so I can read them offline and write my little notes.
Assistant to
write
read
my
them
little
to me.
notes. Yes,
and throw them in the fire when I'm finished.
I create jobs, not very good jobs, but I create employment for people. I scan it, because that person's not local, they're remote. So I have to print that and then scan it and send it to them.
That's called workflow automation.
Correct. Okay, so then just any other pieces on the, I guess on the Win365 or AVD side. So I think, I've just got to reach over here and scroll. So Ahmed, I think you mentioned that there was some, that there are some things on the AVD side that weren't quite what you're expecting, or, don't give the functionality that you're after. Is that right?
Maybe not. Was anyone talking about the difference between Cloud PC and AVD?
No. I don't think so.
So I just have one additional question around Cloud PC. Are we able to take advantage of Microsoft peering to secure it, or are we limited to internet-based connectivity to the RD web services?
On the AVD side, I know that you could do peering, but and leverage it there. But on the, I don't know, but I'd sort of have to guess that with Win365, they would be making it like a cloud, an internet first experience. But if you were, I guess, you wouldn't necessarily, you wouldn't be able to configure like the endpoints using like the normal kinds of resource firewalls that you'd normally get access to in an Azure subscription, because that that side of things wouldn't be exposed to you in Azure if you're using Win365. Whereas if you're using AVD, you're going to get a lot more options around just control in general. So my gut feeling, because I've never seen anything about it, so my gut feeling is that it's not there.
The front door, like, is this?
Yeah. So basically, only allowing, only coming in via, or effectively like blocking internet access and just hitting Microsoft, the Microsoft endpoints through ExpressRoute or whatever.
Yeah, I don't think that's the intention of Cloud PC. Yeah, it's meant to be an open box.
Yeah. Now, the other thing that I was like, that I thought that there'd been a more recent announcement on based on something I saw, but no, there hasn't been any more recent announcements. But some of the the offline capabilities that they were talking about at Ignite earlier this year, at what do we call it? Ignite 822H1. So I'd sort of, even if it's not
Spring Ignite, wasn't it?
no fall. So like, I guess there'll probably be quite a few announcements around. Actually, it's pretty much everything. There'll be announcements coming out, a day after next month's thing. So I think some of these things we'll probably see quite a bit more fleshed out with them then. And some of the things that they kind of previewed, hopefully we start to see a few public previews of those things after the upcoming Ignite. Because some of the stuff that they've got looks real, like things like offline usage. It's like that could be quite interesting, but alas, that's all we were told. Okay, so let's move on then and just cover off just some of the things around ADMX and ADML. Now, Ben, Steve told me to download the Citrix ADMX files, but he didn't tell me why. And he was acting like there was something special that they did. Are you aware of why he specifically asked me to download those?
Look, I'm going to go with it's a good example of a well done policy. It could also be something to do with the fact that there's dependencies between the two.
Yep.
That might be the example.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to put my hand up and say, as much as this is a very good technology and it's probably something that we need, it's not my favorite thing to talk about. I think we're all very comfortable with understanding that my belief was that, this modern management platform that we're all going to be embracing and championing was going to make things simpler, not continue doing the busy work that we all love in on-prem in the cloud. And here we are. So I think the reason that he got you to get that was that specifically there are dependencies in the chain there, and it's just a good example of a well-crafted ADMX policy.
Okay, so we'll wait to demo until Steve appears. So even that, but I like that he sort of told me to download it to make sure that he wasn't the one who had to show anything.
Nice.
Okay, so I guess then just the important things here when we're talking about the import is, basically our custom or third-party partner-provided ADMX files. We can now go through and import them pretty easily. And basically, once we've got them imported, we're just creating a device configuration policy and treating it the way that we'd treat other policies. And when it's time to change the settings, we just change the setting in the policy. So it's so I guess I know that this is something that a lot of people wanted, but I'm still torn over the fact that GPO is a forever, GPO infinity or GPO infinite. Yeah, it's a.
Well, it's not GPO infinite anymore. It's ADMX. So
Yes.
actually, let me clarify. So the ADMX policy is the template. Okay.
Yeah.
So the ADMX think of it for anyone, just show of hands. Most of us are on Teams. Show of hands who doesn't know what an ADMX template is or an ADMX policy is. I'll give you exactly 5 seconds. Otherwise, everyone knows what it is.
Do you trigger people if you pronounce it ADMX?
Maybe.
I think you should try it, Ben.
That is like going to a conference around APIs called API.
API, yes.
Yes. Okay. So anyway, an ADMX template is essentially a custom OMA URI template, but like more ingestible. So all of the stuff that we are talking about here can be done if you hate yourself and want to write custom OMA URIs. It's very difficult, but it is very possible. So this is just a nice abstraction layer that makes custom OMA URIs more ingestible and digestible. The ADML templates are more around languages. Yeah. If I remember the conversation that I had just 2 weeks ago, that's going to be on an Intune training video at some point. So I know that one of the conversations we were having before we started recording was, these custom ADMX policies are great as long as you want the language to be English. I believe the ADML language is around the idea that you can have different languages specifically. Yeah, I don't know. This stuff is good. People need it. There's lots of control that people want to have. I still genuinely believe that you should just be focusing more on controlling the ingress and egress of data in your environment over whether someone can make their font bold. But, this is where we are.
So just a question, and if you can if you want to sort of unmute or just sort of drop your responses into chat, what templates are on your must try immediately list? So is there anything in particular that, not just being happy that the ingestion was available, but what specific templates for the particular products, etc., are the things that you're basically, this is going to make your life a lot easier?
So Dean's already responded very quickly with drive mapping. Now, this is good. So this is a conversation that we could have an entire session on. Drive mapping was supposed to be dead. The dream of modern device management was that you shouldn't have drive mapping. You should have all of your files on SharePoint locations and you ingest them through things like Teams, or if you're insane, directly through SharePoint or OneDrive or whatever. I guess the question that I have for you, Dean, is, and I already know the answer because I know drive maps aren't going anywhere anytime soon. But like, what is the use case that you have for this?
So I know that there's other ways to do it, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm a technical person and I know there's other ways. My customer isn't, and they need an easy way. I think I understand what you're saying, Ben, but I disagree with your approach to this being that it's an extension of GPO. How about I turn this around and say, this is a way for people to define their own custom policies. So this is a way for the software vendor to produce a way for somebody to manage settings in their app via Intune without needing to explain to people how to write custom OMA URIs.
Agreed. That is a nice aspirational endpoint, and I hope that's where we end up. I hope
it's just a way to, it's the way to create policies for people who are not technical to ingest and use simply.
Agreed. Yeah, no, like I definitely agree that if we can get into a situation where software vendors are actually providing ways to customize their software through these standardized things, and that is kind of the goal of the ADMX project, that they have a standard suite of here's how to ingest and control things in either the HKCU or HK local machine hives in your registry. Please write the correct performer ADMX policies for that. I guess I'm just a little bit burnt by seeing third-party vendors attempt to standardize or use standardized solutions, and I've seen their experience. So I hope that is what happens. I'm just a little cognizant that maybe that's not what's going to happen. But the good news is that as this matures, we're going to have some very good documentation so that potentially if the vendors don't do it, then we can, which is, that's kind of my driving hope, is that when the software vendors don't do it properly, we'll have good documentation so that we can fix it for them.
Okay, so if we look at something like the good old 80-20 rule of, basically we could sort of cover the vast majority, 80% of people with a very small number of templates. Why isn't there just the equivalent of a template store / library / marketplace in Endpoint Manager, where we get to, where we don't have to import them all and have the Intune UI get cluttered up with, 1,000 different template or profile choices when it's time to deploy. But having something where, if it's like, if it's maintained by the software vendor, and just having it as a checkbox option, add this to my tenant.
Mm-hmm.
And then also having the ability to remove it from the tenant when you stop using that particular software. Like that, because I know that the Endpoint Manager team do not want to take on the responsibility of doing all of this work for all of these other vendors, and I completely understand that. Like the fact that they've got, Chrome support in there already through Google's templates that they've brought in. That's where it's like, that one thing that they've done there would impact such a huge number of customers in a positive way. And if you went through a list, sure, some people are going to have random things that everyone is going to say, why on earth are you still using that? But if you sort of think about it, it's probably to get what's going to, the majority of like, what do most people actually want? What are your top 3 or 4?
Yeah,
It's probably not going to be a huge list. If you sort of like look at the, cut off the long tail, like I can't see it being a ridiculously long list.
Yeah. So I'm just going to jump in. There's a conversation that's ongoing with drive mapping in the chat. This is interesting, and it's, we did do a video on this on the Intune training stuff a couple of weeks ago that we're waiting to get ready to go live, where we had a little discussion around drive mappings, and there actually is a community created ADMX policy for drive mappings. The one thing that I would flag, and like, Scott Williams has stated drive mappings for location specific shares. That's cool. So like if we're gonna drink the Kool-Aid and do like, full zero trust cloud management only, how quickly do you want that to exist? The IME agent doesn't sit there polling every 3 seconds. What if I move to a different site and all of a sudden I don't have access to that? How do you handle the fact that maybe you don't have line of sight access? How do you handle Kerberos authentication on drives? There's a lot of different scenarios that come in aside from just, hey, I want D drive to be pointed to my my documents. It is a very complicated conversation, and the hope is that we can stop talking about this instead of coming out with community solutions for it. I know I've got one. I don't like talking about it because I don't want to talk about it anymore. But there are community ADMX policies for drive mappings, but it doesn't solve the problems that exist if you decide to go down the Intune route and the zero trust route. That whole concept of Kerberos authentication and key trust, and that doesn't go away. Is what I just wanted to point out.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ben. It doesn't go away, but I think we established that at the beginning of the conversation, that identity does form the bedrock of what we're doing, and that hybrid identity specifically isn't going to go away, not anytime soon. And I think it's the combination of usability and being able to hand this solution over to technical, but not as in-depth technical as most of us are, and finding that sweet spot. And if it means that they need to log off or log back on again for their drive mappings or force a sync or whatever the case may be, then many businesses will be prepared to accept that. I mean, config manager has been around for a long time, and we know that that thing is often not very fast either.
Still faster than Intune.
No, that's true.
You can force a policy sync on a CM agent. That's the concern, right? People expect that if you want something done, you can force a sync. You kind of can with IME, but not really. So like there's expectation versus reality is the conversation that needs to be had, really.
Yeah, in an ideal world, everybody would move stuff into SharePoint-like data stores and access it through drives that are linked and whatnot. But the reality is that we are a million miles from there.
Well, some people are, but yes, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, and especially like the bank scenario you were talking about. Like, I don't even want to imagine some of what goes on in there.
Yes, well, we'll find out. It'll be interesting.
Okay, so in terms of some of the limitations, now I don't know if these are preview limitations or if these are going to be like longer term limitations. So, a maximum of 10 ADMX files, each of them a megabyte or smaller. And a meg ADMX file will have a lot of stuff. That's a lot for ADMX. And for each ADMX, only one ADML file. And each ADMX only supports one language. And right now that language is English.
Mm-hmm. And that's what that ADML file we're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. So the fact that even in the official documentation, they're saying currently only ENUS ADML, I think that's sort of a nod, but it's kind of like a non-committal nod to other languages being supported in the future without them saying it is or isn't.
Yes, correct. Well, note that at the top there, they're not saying that there's a maximum amount of ADML files that can be uploaded.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And then, so then the other thing, and maybe this is what why Steve wanted me to grab the Citrix example. Now, hopefully Steve reappears. But in this case, it's that if you've got ADMX files that have got dependencies, it's the usual thing. The dependencies need to be loaded first. So maybe we'll get to find out. Now, let me see. So we've already sort of spoken a bit about some of the templates. Were there any other ones that popped up? I can only see chat on my phone at the moment. So
no, we got stuck on drive mapping. I guess like other people would specifically maybe there's a scenario where I don't know. Do people still use Zoom? The pandemic's kind of over, right? Are people still using Zoom? What software do you absolutely feel like you need to manage in your environment?
I know that a customer for me is they have the Lenovo hardware, and for Lenovo you got the Lenovo Commercial Vantage tool, I think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And in a normal domain world, you can use their GPOs to manage the settings for the BIOS, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And for Intune, you have to convert them to OMA URIs.
Sure.
So it should be easier to import their GPO, I think.
Should be, yeah.
Their ADMX file into Intune.
Do they have an ADMX file that can be imported?
Yeah, they have a separate ADMX file, yeah.
Okay, interesting. Has anyone else got any applications they absolutely need to manage?
Firefox.
You heard it here first. None. There are no applications that we need to manage. ADMX is a joke. GPO is dead. We can all move on.
Do I still have the page up with the samples they mentioned? Let me check.
Are we still recording?
Yes, yes, we are. Do I have? Okay, so the examples that they're sort of mentioning here, Adobe Reader.
Yeah, sure.
Firefox.
Yeah, Mozilla Firefox, Oh, and Zoom is on there. Someone still
Zoom
uses
is on
Zoom.
there.
Yes.
Zoom is a real world scenario where people need to control and manage the software. What's funny about Zoom, and this just comes from personally working with this product quite a lot, is that the installer itself provides a lot of control. From the initial install of the product, you can actually set how it's going to work in your environment, so you don't need to follow it up with a policy. But it's cool. They're one of the software vendors that gets a big green tick from me as far as
But they still allow
supportability.
you. But do they still allow you to make changes after deployment?
That
they still-
depends on whether you install the user context or the machine context.
Which
So
which is the
sideways.
better option?
The machine context is
Machine,
more
yeah.
controllable, of course.
Yeah.
That's actually a fun conversation where post pandemic, where no one had Zoom, and then everyone got it because they got invited to a Zoom meeting, so they installed the user context.
Yeah.
The conversation is, how do we get away from the user context to the machine context? Because you could install both, and it didn't get rid of the user one. But yes, if you want to manage the software, always machine. Doesn't matter what the software is.
Okay, so let's see if we can figure out why Steve suggested.
Let's do it. Let's
yeah.
do it.
So just to sort of get access to it, let me just sort of jump back a sec. We just go to devices, config profiles, and then import ADMX. And I've already downloaded it to, no, not to a recordings folder. I don't know why it's going there. So Citrix Workspace, ADMX files. And I guess here, the first thing that we need to sort of understand is, and this is maybe what Steve was going to guide us through, is that we've got the Citrix base ADMX and the receiver ADMX file.
Yep.
So Ben, do you know which one we should be choosing?
We're going to do the base. So the receiver has a dependency on the base to be installed. I think this is the conversation that we were having. So
EN-US.
Yep.
Base ADML and non-functioning drop-down for language.
But it's okay because we all speak English, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll give that a second. What would happen is if you attempted to install the other one, I believe it would flag that it is dependent on another ADMX policy that needs to be installed. Maybe that's what Steve wanted us to show off. He's not here, so
he's in the building.
He doesn't get a say. Yeah.
Yeah, he's in the building somewhere. So
you say that.
Assuming, unless he's.
I reckon he's gone home.
Yeah. No, but his laptop's not here, so he could have gone home.
He's definitely gone home.
Okay, are you still actually uploading?
Now, what's interesting about this is that the UI takes quite a while to flag that it is uploaded, but it is probably already uploaded.
Because they're tiny files. I'm wondering what the hell's going on here.
There are ways that you can speed that process up or verify that it is actually uploaded. Stay tuned to the Intune training video where we get into that with the team that built it. But functionally, just understand that the UI is always playing catch up with the backend APIs.
Doing a browser refresh also worked.
Exactly. Yeah. So we can see that's done. So now import the other one and let's get that up. There is going to be now, a lot of this stuff is, as I sort of intimated there, it's glorified custom OMA URI building. There's going to be very good documentation on how to make this yourself. Right now, it's pretty thin on the ground. But there's nothing stopping you from opening these ADMX files in VS Code or Notepad or whatever your favorite tool is to sort of look at how they're built. I don't know whether you wanted to open one of these up and just have a look, Mark. It's just XML files, and it's quite funny. I had a conversation with one of the original creators of the XML spec today, where he was quite surprised that we're still dealing with this stuff. He's like, doesn't everyone use JSON now? But there's nothing super complicated about what we're looking at here. It's just do Visual Studio Code. It should be fine.
It's about the customer. The customer is not interested in custom policies. They're not interested in digging into XML. You know,
No, exactly.
They want to have their 5 little options to be able to set settings, right? I think one thing you could do to make this even better would be to give you a list of all the settings that are available, and it only imports those that you want.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to import the entire ADMX when you only want one small section of it or one particular setting.
And that's something you could 100% do with this. Like you could pull out.
Oh, you could manually butcher these things for sure. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I think you said that better than I would. A lot less swear words. But yeah, so functionally,
butcher.
Like, you know, exactly. Yeah, so like, you know, what we're looking at is not super complicated. A lot of like the things like explain text, and this is interesting. So like, have a look at explain text there. String explain local app discovery. That's pulling that from the ADML file. So if you went into the ADML file and had a look for explain local app discovery, you'd actually find the text that expanded on what that actually meant. So, you know, these are all just abstractions on abstractions on abstractions of custom OMI URIs.
And it's only 6,243 lines long.
No, it's easy. Yeah, it's nothing.
But I assume though, like I've never looked at creating these from scratch, but I'd have to assume that Microsoft's got some developer documentation around this.
It's the OMI URI documentation, essentially. But the ADMX stuff is, as I said, so the way that it's being done now, that documentation is currently being revised. You know, the end state here is that we want the vendors to be able to build this stuff quickly and reliably. Who knows what's going to happen?
So has anyone built any tools to assist in this process that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of, no. ADMX building is a punishing task.
It's a boutique experience.
It is. That is again. That's a fantastic way to put it, Mark.
Yeah, I might leave that one alone.
Look, it's like app packaging. No one likes to do it, and the ones that do it have serious problems, and that's why I'm into app packaging.
Okay, so let's just have a quick look at what was then created. So from templates and so does it show up in templates, or do we have to go into settings?
I believe it's under settings catalog. If I was paying attention, which I very much wasn't.
Okay, we don't have Citrix in there. Let's just try receiver.
Give the browser a refresh, see what happens.
Yeah.
I'm gonna send the boss a message and see if he's done with his call.
Let's just see if I don't think app is a good thing to search on.
No, probably not.
No, nothing matches app. I don't think that could be right.
I think I see him.
Yeah, he's just turned up.
I think you need to create the policy not from a settings catalog, but from an imported catalog.
So, Steve, we've just imported the Citrix and the receiver ADMX and ADML files.
Yes.
Please take us on a journey to create a policy for that.
Then it is, if we go to devices, if we go to configuration profiles, we go create profile, then we go drop down and we go to Windows 10 or later, we select templates, and then what you should see in here is Citrix from memory.
No, you'll see imported administrative templates.
That's
Is
it,
that-
yes.
Oh, yeah.
There it is.
Oh, there we go.
Preview.
Okay.
Thank you. I knew it was in
Look
here
at this
somewhere.
guy. Crushing it, Dean. Doing better than we can.
Who said we were professionals?
I learned from your videos, guys.
I don't.
What I learn is probably not what you guys are aiming to teach, but
Sometimes. It might be under user configuration.
Yeah.
Did it actually successfully import?
Yeah. Am I spelling receiver right?
If you go to all settings, do you see anything in there?
This is a great demo. I see you
Great.
sacrificed correctly.
Did I choose?
You did.
Yeah.
Go back into the import ADMX template. Let's have a look at that.
Yeah, imported templates.
Yep.
Unless there's a bit of lag before they appear.
Could well be.
Could be. Yeah, if you can't see it from all settings, it's not going to be there.
Yeah.
Just go back into the import and have a look and see if it's... Could be the best demo we've
Oh, the
done. Hey,
receiver.
look at that.
Okay, it failed.
Yes, it did. If you go to upload failed, why?
Method of operation not implemented. Okay.
Do you
Did we
remember
not
that?
have this? We had this,
I know why.
do you?
I
Go
do.
for it.
This
Why?
This is the combo box issue where you need to go in and remove the combo box from the ADMX file. So you can import it, which is why I said to use this.
Oh, okay. So you didn't guess that one correctly, Ben. I'm taking a point off you.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
I knew there was a reason you wanted these. I couldn't remember why. I just figured you were being cheeky.
So
You were being cheeky.
yeah, sort of. So what it meant, what I'm getting at here is when you import the ADMX policies, there's certain settings that don't get imported correctly right now, and one of those is the combo box. So what you can do is you can go and modify your ADMX file and remove those combo boxes. And once you've done that, then it'll import without any problems.
So what line do I go to?
Search for combo box.
You've got 6,243 lines. So just what should I go to?
Control F, combo.
There are no combos.
Yeah, interesting.
Because it should combo meal.
Combo meal. Happy meal.
Large combo meal.
It's still not working, Mark.
Not Coke. It's broken. It's not showing me pictures of things I want to see.
Did we need to do that on the Citrix ADMX policy?
No, because the Citrix ADMX policy imported.
It did. That's correct.
And that's just the container one. So did you talk about the namespaces and how that all works?
No. I talked about how much I hate group policy.
Oh, yeah. That checks out.
Yeah.
So it's good to see the demos working perfectly.
Yeah.
Web mapping checkbox. I'm just searching on box now. We've got 8 matches to box, but nothing on combo.
I'm just going to quickly download and look on my computer.
For everyone watching, this is what happens when we're playing with preview technology.
Yeah. It's not because it's preview, it's because we just didn't organize.
Preview.
Do you
Collaborate.
know if the values set with these policies tattoo or not? That's one thing I don't know.
So that comes down to the conversation around whether it's tri-state or not. It depends on whether the policy supports tri-state or not. So if it only does enable or disable and it's never configured, then it is not configured, and then it will be either enabled or disabled, which means yes, it will be tattooed. The hope is that all policies will be tri-state, which is enabled, disabled, not enabled. Again, this comes down to whether the vendor configures the ADMX policy to support that or not. So if you have an ADMX policy that doesn't support tri-state and only does tattooing, reach out to the vendor and punch them repeatedly until they do it properly.
Or what you can do is you can load the ADMX file into VS Code and modify it to include the tri-state setting.
Yes. Or punch the vendor and make them do it properly in the first place.
Good luck with that one.
Yes.
I've found vendors don't really work all that hard if they...
It could be cathartic.
Yeah. All right, let's do this, Mark. I'm just going to quickly join the meeting.
Okay.
And I already have one here prepared earlier. Don't use audio.
Alvin, did you want to expound on your list element or enum question?
Sorry, I'm looking at the understanding ADMX back policies. Enum here actually looks like a drop-down list. So when you're searching for it in the VS Code, enum has multiple items on it, like a checkbox would. Sorry, a combo box would.
Sure.
So maybe that's what you're looking for. Instead of looking for combo, you're looking for enum.
It might well be enum.
Potentially.
I do know that it's a combo box, but is the actual field, but you may well be right, and I agree. So let's go over here.
So Ben, just to pause for a second. Ben, did you see? Go back to the four that you had listed. Ben, there's one on there for you.
Drive mapping, yeah. What channel we are? Oh, we're on the Intune training. So again, I said that we sort of demoed this in the Intune training video that I think it's going to be out next week, right, Steve?
Yes.
Yeah. If I split the video and get it uploaded, maybe.
Yeah, that thing.
Sideways, yes. Yeah. No.
It doesn't get flagged as 18 plus.
Yeah. Yeah. No. It's a thing. Yeah. Interesting. Enum. I mean, enum does not mean enum is an enum. It's not. Yeah.
Right, so here's our demo profile. So I've got our 4 characters because you have to have 4 characters in a name. Yay. And there's where you see all of those settings now. So if I go computer, you'll see the Citrix components and the transparent lock screen. If I go to user, there's an additional one here, which I love, and I think it's awesome, is you can now do network drive mapping because there is an ADMX file you can download from the community, which we go through in our video, where you can now go in here and go enable. And you'll see here it's got the tri-state, which is enabled, disabled, not configured, and that will allow it to not add the tattoo. And then you go DC01/data.
I'm assuming the thumbs up are coming from Dean.
Probably, but I also smiley face. But Dean, just to sort of ruin your dreams a little bit, everything that I was saying around the complexity of handling auth and all that sort of stuff, this doesn't solve that. This is just drive mapping. There's a bunch of other things that need to be thought about. This is just a way of mapping a drive.
I'm well aware.
Drive mapping is not hard. It's everything else that's difficult. So this solves the easy part.
Well, as I say, the customer can go and create policies as they like and define the drive mappings by just simply typing them in. I will take care of the authentication for them.
Hello, business.
But they do. Yeah, but they don't exactly that, Steve. And the thing is that they, I don't want them to be messing around with code that I'm going to have to come back with and debug and try and fix because they messed something up.
Mm.
Yep. I'd agree with
So
that.
I don't think you're going to win with me there, Ben.
There's definitely not trying to win anyone over. I've battled this a lot. And seeing this and everyone getting excited about it, I'm like, yeah, this isn't the problem though.
If I was
being
to
able to
tell
map
you
a
that I
drive
think that
isn't the
this is
problem.
one of the best features they've added to Intune in years, you'd probably hate me for that, but I do think it is.
ADMX?
You're missing the point. It's not about ADMX. This could be JSON. It could be anything, but this is the ability to create and define your own policies on the fly without depending on Microsoft needing to come to your rescue.
Why I think it's important and why I think it's awesome as well is it lowers the time to value for customers that already have
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And that's the big winner for me.
If the point is here that we get a lot of community involvement and people are creating custom things that we can all just ingest, it's going to be fantastic. My concern is that we end up with 20 years of nested ADMX policies that people
100%
think
we're going to get that.
Yeah. My concern is that, we've literally run into scenarios where people say, you can't do this, look at my group policies. We're now just going to have the conversation, you can't do this, look at my ADMX policies. I am a big proponent of make it simple, keep it simple, not overcomplicate. And this just opens the door to complication. I don't think it's wrong. I definitely don't think it's wrong at all. I think it's necessary. I'm just looking at what's going to happen and crying a little bit on the inside and on the outside.
You can only import 10, all right?
Yeah, for now. Come on.
Yeah, so choose them carefully.
Just merge them all together until they're 1 meg, and then just
choose your friends carefully.
But you know that people are going to do that.
Yeah, of course they are.
And people will be sort of editing the, basically editing the lookups and everything, shortening the reference names of everything.
They're going to be code golfing ADMX files.
See what they can squeeze in. Was there a size limit on the ADML file?
No.
They didn't specify that.
Yeah.
Mark.
So.
So what I'll quickly go here as well, because it was missed earlier, is the nesting. Let's see if I can find my screen.
I'm not used to the screen split. Yeah.
All right, so obviously we've got our ADMX files here.
Yeah.
And we can see when we're looking at the namespace, this is where we're saying we're using these prefixes. So this is my policy namespace being receiver. So that's where in the portal you're seeing it as receiver at that top level. And then sitting underneath that, we have the prefixes or the required classes or existing objects. So the Microsoft Policies Windows is imported by default, but what we're looking for with the receiver one is we need to have our Citrix policy base, which is this one, which is super simple. All it's doing is creating that namespace. Here's our target prefix Citrix namespace, and it contains everything else that's going to go underneath it. So then you'll have Citrix receiver when you look in the UX.
Yep.
So that's why you need to import the Citrix one before you import the receiver one. Just for reference. Yeah. And then that adds up and is included in your 10. So
So don't do Citrix is what we're saying.
Or modify the receiver one so it doesn't need to include the using Citrix policy based.
Exactly. Yeah.
I didn't tell you to do that. Try it yourself. Figure out what works.
I think Scott Williams just said that he would code golf this for us.
I thought so too.
Yeah.
Did we talk about ADMX versus ADML and all of that?
Just that ADML is the language expansions for ADMX files.
Yeah. So if we go to JP as an example, there's all the text. Everybody reads Japanese, right?
Yeah. It says string ID equals unknown 16.
Exactly. Exactly. We could go French.
We can't
Look
go
at Dutch.
French though.
So how dare you not choose Netherlands?
Yeah.
With your own up there. How dare you?
There you
No,
go.
that's German.
I'm just going to
Oh,
pick.
he's definitely getting in trouble now.
Sorry, it
NL,
hit
NL.
7 p.m. and my speaker's turned off. I'm not supposed to be in front of my computer anymore.
There you go.
Yeah. Citrus onderdelen.
Everybody can understand that, right?
Yes.
Perfect. Cool. Did that answer everybody's question that nobody else could answer?
Well, yeah, what happened? We uploaded the English ADML file, and of course we can select English. What happens if you upload in this case, the Dutch ADML file?
All right,
It's still English then?
Let's have a look. Let me just quickly reshare my screen.
If you scroll to the top of that ADML file, I'm sure it flags what it is. If you just change that to English US or whatever it is, I'm sure you could get your own language in there.
It's interesting. So if we go import, let's just go. And let's go code base. And Netherlands base. No, it doesn't let me change it.
It's not going to let you change it, but look at the code base file.
Yeah.
Look at the ADML file. Like, just out of curiosity, I've got a feeling that I know how you could modify that so that you could trick it into thinking that it's English.
It doesn't actually say your language at the top of it.
Interesting. Then I guess it would be fine.
It's based on the
content.
No, the file name. Oh no, the content. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
literally.
maybe as long as there's no Unicode, perhaps.
Yep.
Yeah, it would need to, unless there was some metadata in that file specifying what the language was, then there's literally no way to identify that. It's just text.
Yeah, but if it's ASCII versus Unicode, maybe the system once it's uploaded doesn't know how to parse Unicode text or
No,
something.
it's all Unicode.
Let's watch this fail.
It's 2022.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll go with that.
let's pretend everything's modern. Yes.
Yeah.
Has to be. We're dealing with XML files in 2022. It's definitely modern.
We're dealing with ADMX files.
There's obviously some limitation though that they haven't allowed other languages yet. So maybe that bit hasn't quite been coded yet.
That'll just be around, how do we handle different language devices, pretty much.
Yeah.
And that'll be a problem with leveraging the IME agent that's currently not dealing with language as well as it should.
Well, no, I think that language pack being the ML-NL file, that's only for the administrative review. It's not for the actual registry keys that are set on the device.
Sure.
So if my UX is in Netherlands, then it should come up and go, I expect it to be coming in Dutch.
Maybe. Unless there's some policies that absolutely are in, like, we've had scenarios at work where we've had registry keys that need to be in specific, like their region specific string values that need to be there.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Another file with the same target namespaces already exists. Really?
Yep.
I wonder why. But yeah, you'll be able to load up whichever language pack you want there, and then that's what's going to be rendered for your admins. Even if they say, no matter which language you choose, it's just going to render the characters that are there, unless it's going to attempt to do a translation, which I doubt it will do. So, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so my takeaway from this is we need to hold a competition. Who can squeeze the most into a 1 meg ADMX file? It does not have to be quality content. It just has to be quantity of settings in a single ADMX.
Well, no, I could easily fill up a 1 meg file.
Yeah.
That's easy. I'm sure we could go and talk about the making of the Panama Canal.
Yeah.
We could. We've done at work. We've done quite a lot of work on code golfing PowerShell to fit within the constraints of detection method and policy size limits. So I'm sure that if that was the thing we were genuinely interested in, we could have some fun with that. I'm by no means putting my hand up to say that I'm even going to touch ADMX files.
I totally saw you put your hand up.
Oh, no, you weren't here earlier. Because it was showing you as online in the meeting, we gave you an opportunity to object to some of the things that were assigned to you.
Oh yeah,
But
you
weren't-
legally
weren't
committed
here.
to some weird stuff. Like I can't believe that you did what you said you would.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah. Okay, so let's sort of finish up the official part. So I think we sort of covered the topics that we needed to cover. Now we'll sort of switch over to the non-recorded session or part of the evening where if anyone's got some things that they've been sitting on that they didn't want to say and have evidence of that conversation existing. So I'll just stop the recording.